I'm so excited to be here. I'm coming from Google.org. I'm one of the people that got left behind. No, it's fine. I love it there. I love to see where everybody has ended up here. I'm so excited to see so many familiar faces, so many new faces. I'm gonna follow up on the promise that that was made that we'll make some Cambridge to Cambridge jokes. I have been coming to the Blockley Summit and speaking about the educational aspects of Blockley since the other Cambridge session. And I'm going to keep bringing new questions to y'all. I think I have hopefully made a reputation for myself as not bringing answers, but just dropping big questions to this group, because this is a great group to tackle with big, hairy questions. And the hairiest one we've got right now is, what does AI mean for CS education? So I'm going to talk a little bit about coding with catapults. If you were here last year, you may be familiar with the metaphor that I'm going to really labor. And then I'll throw out some other wild metaphors, and it'll probably frustrate people, but that's fine. We're going to talk about vibe coding. Hate the term, but it's real. We're going to talk about what real CS for all means in this new context. And then I'm going to drop some of those big questions, and hopefully you chew on them, and maybe next year we have come back and have some new ideas about those questions. So, coding with catapults. The metaphor that I dropped last year was that if you vibe code, if you use AI to program, and you come to this without any background in computer science, it's kind of like you're being flung up against the side of a mountain. You make a lot of progress really fast, you get really high up on that mountain, it can be very exciting, and then what? Right? You're stuck on the side of the mountain, you don't know what to do next. It can be really difficult, and it can be really kind of dangerous, right? Like that's a cold, desolate mountaintop. I don't want somebody to end up there who's never mountaineered before. So what do we do about this? Well, we could say, why do we need to learn to climb? We've got catapults now. This is the why do we need computer science anymore argument. Why do we need CS? Why do we need to learn to program when we've got agents that do it for us? But I would argue that we probably need to learn to climb now because we've got these catapults. We know people are going to be flinging themselves up against the side of the mountain. How do we better prepare them for that world? How do we help them make the right choices about when they want to use a catapult and when they don't? So that brings me to a year later in vibe coding. When we talked last year, the term vibe coding was a few months old, which is wild to think. Things move so quickly, it feels like it's been the thing that everybody's saying forever, but it was still just this nascent, like, is this a thing? What does it look like? Well, we're a year further in now, so what does it look like? There's a lot of really powerful stuff that we're seeing. At Google, we are saying that 75% of code is AI generated. Now, what does that mean? There's a lot of nuance there. Is that just robots spitting out code into the world? No, obviously not. That is under the orchestration of software engineers who know what they're doing. But that's a lot of throughput. That's a lot of code that's being generated. We're seeing agentic workflows that work across a lot of different systems. Joe, you promised me that my slides were going to be updated, and they're not. So you can yell at Joe. We're seeing MCPs being able to connect a whole bunch of different things. It's not just code. It's making commits, reviewing commits. All parts of the system are being touched by large language models now, which is wild. And we're seeing a real push towards thinking more about the front end of this. Going back to thinking about spec-driven design. Going back to thinking about really articulating your thinking before you start dumping into this system that hopefully is acting on your thinking. We've also got some negatives that we're seeing. So along with that power, we have a lot of keys being exposed by Moltbook. If you're familiar with the social network for agents, I don't want to get started on it, but agents just throwing your secrets out to the world. Kind of wild. It is not uncommon to read news reports about people who are surprised by $80,000 bills, whether that's because their key was exposed or because they didn't really understand what they were doing, and now they're leveraging an API that costs a lot of money and is being hit more than they think it is. And regardless of whether you know what you're doing or not, I think we're seeing snowballing tech debt. You don't get to have all of that new code being generated without some consequences. We're probably generating, well, we're certainly generating more code than we can read, and that's risky. So what does all of that mean for students? What does that mean for trying to learn how to do this work Well, it's really easy to offload all of your thinking. How do we think about the choice to cognitively offload versus the choice to have friction? Because we know learning happens in moments of friction. And we know that students with all of the other forces upon them may choose the frictionless route for good or bad reasons. We're seeing a buildup of epistemic debt in the same way that we're seeing this buildup of technical debt. You can imagine, as a child sitting in the back of the car and you go on a 2-hour road trip. What if then your dad handed you the keys and said, "Get us back home," right? If you have not been engaged in that journey, you don't know all of the knowledge that has been built up over here in the agent and is not yours. And we're seeing a real issue with false confidence. These are sycophantic LLMs that think everything you say is amazing. It's it's wild. I feel great. That was a 10x question I just asked. I'm the greatest developer ever born because I questioned whether maybe we want a unit test here. Awesome. And then we see, oh, now it's going to start hallucinating, or I've run out of tokens, and all of a sudden, all that confidence, all that genius that I've built up just dissipates into nothingness. So we're throwing a bunch of people up against the mountain. Some of them are learning to climb, some of them are not. What do we do for these students? Well, the nice thing is, I think this is a real moment to go back and say CS for all actually means for all. And I think it's always meant for all. And I know a lot of you think it's always meant for all, but now it really, really, really is, because it's not whether you become a developer or not that you need these skills. Everybody has access to more powerful tools now, so everybody needs to be prepared to use that tool. I don't think everybody drives anymore in the way that they used to, but like when I was in high school, we all learned to drive in high school because that's a big, powerful tool to put in everybody's hands. We have a responsibility to prepare them. So we need to go back to basics and give everybody those foundational skills. This group is really good about thinking about design for learning. But when you look at a lot of the tools that are coming out today, they are not being designed for education first. And they probably should be even when they're for industry, because this is all new for everyone. Things are changing constantly, and we should be thinking about what it means to learn alongside these tools. And we probably need to think about meeting people where they land. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the Blockly community, is to think, okay, if somebody gets thrown up against the side of that mountain, how do you make that mountain more hospitable? How do you make engaging with code that is generated by an LLM more accessible to everyone, whether you've got background or not? That feels very Blockly to me. So this is where I'm going to throw out questions, and I'm not going to give you any answers, and hopefully we can have interesting conversations over lunch, and maybe my next iteration of this talk next year has some answers. This is where I'm going to start mixing metaphors, because I really tried to keep it all in line, and I failed, and I just gave up. I said, all right, I'm just going to use a bunch of different metaphors. That's fine. I have heard, and you all have probably heard, some of these metaphors for what Blockly is or what blocks do. One of the ones that I think we've done a good job of fighting against, but still exists out there in the ecosystem somewhat, is that blocks are training wheels, right? Like they're a thing that gets you started, and they're meant to be thrown away. And we have some really great examples in this room of that being absolutely not true, right? If you are using blocks in industry, obviously that is not a throwaway thing. Another one that's maybe closer to the truth is that they're steps, right? They are opportunities to operate at different levels of abstraction. And you can start walking up those steps and get deeper and deeper. And maybe there's landings on the steps where it's like, well, this is a good place for you to end your journey or to pause your journey right now because you have enough power at this level of abstraction to do what you want to do. Here's my really bad metaphor. Okay. I'm just gonna show it to you, and then I'm gonna be a little ashamed, but it's okay. We'll make it through it. Blocks is a continuously variable transmission. Look, I'm sorry. It's the best I can do. But the idea here, I think the metaphor that I want us to be thinking about is blocks as this spectrum that can let us engage with computational logic where we are at and move up and down that spectrum as we need, right? We can change that balance of speed and torque kind of invisibly, instead of making choices to move up or down, or like, oh, I got to go pick a different tool because the one I've picked is at the wrong level of abstraction for me. This is effectively the question I want us to grapple with, is what is the metaphor for blocks in the age of AI? We think a lot about blocks, I think, so far as a tool for writing code. What are blocks as a tool for consuming code? What are blocks as a tool for engaging with a large language model that generates some of that logic that you need to comprehend then? Is there something that what this community is good at and thinks about? Am I too far, Joe? You look like I'm running over. I'm almost done. This is the question. What do blocks turn into? Or what is the next thing past blocks? How do we think about what this group does that really addresses the needs of learners in a world where they're being inundated with logic that they don't yet understand? That's it. That's the poorly formed question I want to drop to y'all, and hopefully have conversations later. And I know Mark is running a workshop on AI-assisted programming, vibe coding in App Inventor tomorrow that I will be at, and I hope to see other folks who are curious about this attend as well. So that's it. That's me. Sorry for dropping more metaphors. It's all I know how to do.